Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, so welcome to Classic Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is The Borrower Arrietty, and it's an anime from 2010, and it's about 1 hour and 30 minutes long, made by Studio Ghibli. And the movie starts with a young man being driven out to the countryside from the big city. And later on you will figure out that this boy has a heart problem, and he just needs to have a nice and peace and calm and quiet before his surgery. So they arrive at this new house in the countryside, and the driveway is blocked by this other car belonging to the housekeeper. So the driver, this old lady, goes out to check on the housekeeper to move the car. And Shu, as he's called, he gets out of the car and he kind of inspects the garden, and he sees this cat that is preying on a bush or looking for something in a bush, and then a crow attacks the cat, and the cat defends himself. And then Shu sees a little small person about 10 or 8 centimeters tall, and these are the borrowers, basically, a young borrower called Arrietty. And she kind of runs away. She's collecting seeds and herbs and stuff for her mom, basically. And the cat kind of catches sight of her, and it haunts her, and haunts her, kind of try to catch her, I guess. And she barely escapes, and she gives the herbs to her mom, and her mom is kind of upset at her that she left the house without saying anything, but she kind of forgives it when she gets the tea herbs and whatnot. And then Arrietty's father arrives. He's called Pod, and it's the first time that she's supposed to be out loaning stuff or borrowing stuff from the humans, because this is how they basically survive. They live inside the house and they borrow things so they can basically survive, as I said. And it's her first day of borrowing, so she preps, she put on her gear and stuff, and they go into the inner walls of the house and they climb up, and her dad Pod, he preps some fly paper which will be used later on, and they kind of go out through these jacks in the wall, holes in the wall, and she kind of sees how big the human world is for the first time. It's like this big dark room, and Pod kind of slides down, and he uses the fly paper to climb up a shelf, and basically he gets what they need. So they're supposed to get some sugar for their mom because their sugar supply is almost gone. And they get a sugar cube, and Arrietty catches it as her father throws it down. And there's one more item that they need, and there is this tissue paper for some reason. And they climb up to this tissue dispenser, and they try to pull the one of the tissue papers out, but it's stuck. And then the Arrietty catches sight of Shu, which is actually awake. Excuse me, and he's looking directly at her, and Arrietty looks at her father, and he nods, and they just try to get off, because get away from there, because loners are not to be seen by other people than that, or the big folk, basically, because that will make their lives a whole lot more complicated. And Shu kind of says to Arrietty that she's not supposed to be afraid or anything, and he tells her that he saw her in the garden before, and then they kind of go away from there. Shu is not this bad person. He's really nice, actually, but Arrietty's been told that humans are bad and just to keep away from them, basically. So they return to the crawlway, and her father says that you've been seen, but it's okay. It happens sometimes or whatever. He just tried to make her feel better, and he says, we won't tell your mom about this because she will just worry. So when they return to their house, Pod kind of tells her that we lost the sugar because they dropped it on the floor and the tissue paper was ignored. So when he kind of makes this white lie and says, like, the light bulb that he had, it went out, the battery was bad or something. And Arrietty goes to sleep because she feels really bad about it without eating anything. And the next day, the young Shu, he basically leaves the sugar cube that they lost. He leaves it outside the entrance of their house because he saw where she was running, and he knows where they live, basically. And he leave the sugar cube with a note under it. And her father, Pod, basically tells her when they talk in the kitchen, like, don't touch the sugar, and because it's there's like not their way, or something like that, or whatever, and they leave it out there. And she helps her mom with laundry and stuff, and later on there are some ants that were crawling on these sugar cubes, and she sees that there's like a note underneath the sugar cube. So she takes a look at it and she's like, you forgot something. And then she wants to make things right, so she wants to return the sugar cube back to the people or something, because they also talk during this session, like if they were discovered, they just might have to move out and find a new house, and that's their mom is kind of devastated. Her mom is devastated about this because this is a nice house and she doesn't really want to move. So Arrietty takes it upon herself to return the sugar cube, so she gears up with this basically. And then Arrietty sneaks out of the house and climbs a vine on the top of the house, or to the window where Shu's room basically is. And she drops in the sugar cube through the window, and he sees this and he gets her attention. And then they talk a little bit about the dilemma between small people and borrowers basically. And he asks her what her name is, and they tell each other each names. And then he asks her if he can see her, and she basically is about to show himself to him, because they're both curious kind of. And then the big bird from earlier that attacked the cat, he kind of flies right into the window, excuse me, and he gets stuck there. And Shu kind of, even with his heart problem, he tries to save her, and he basically grabs her in his arm. And then the housekeeper comes in and basically takes off her sandal and beats the living crap out of that bird until it falls out of the window. And the housekeeper is kind of like, that never happened before, this kind of old lady. And what do you think, young man, what do you think happened? Shu kind of says, like, maybe it's mating season or something. They go crazy. And she's like, yeah, mating season, yeah, sure. She's not awfully convinced about the whole thing. And then he has Arrietty in his hand. He's basically holding her behind his back, and he lets her go basically, and she escapes. And then he realizes she's gone. He kind of goes back to rest. And then Arrietty returns home, but in the crawl space between the walls, her dad finds her, and she says that she's sorry, but she has to do this, and they have to go and tell their mom basically that they have to move now because they've been seen yet again by another human, and the consequences will be dire if they don't leave. They might be killed off or something. So what happens later is the housekeeper talks to the postman, because the postman is delivering a package, like a FedEx deal or something. And the housekeeper asks the postman, like, do you know any good pestilence control? And he said, sure. He takes up his phone and he kind of search Google or whatever, and he finds like, oh, this is a good company. They'll take any problems with rats or something. And he said, she's kind of crazy, and she said, I think we're dealing with small people now, like small people. And she's kind of crazy because she has seen those in the past, or thought she has seen them, and she kind of want to catch them to prove that they exist basically. So she's kind of crazy already. But anyway, so later Shu is having dinner with his caretaker and the housekeeper, and they eat food and they talk about things, and that he's sad that his parents can't be with him now when he's about to have surgery in a couple of days because of his heart and everything. But he said it's okay and it's fine. And then they talk about there's like the small doll house, which Arrietty and Paul kind of went through earlier in the movie. I forgot to say that. They kind of passed through this dollhouse, and Paul notes and tells Arrietty that there's some things in this world that you can't take, because there's like all this beautiful kind of dollhouse furniture and kettles and all these kind of perfect size for him. So anyway, the caretaker tells Shu that this house was actually made for the small people back in the day, because it was a different time, and but somehow they disappeared, and he's keeping this facade, this masquerade, that he hasn't seen them, And but basically they go down and look at this dollhouse, and it has like all the decorations of a normal dollhouse, but it's like an independent light source. So they have this light switch, and all the lights and lamps and everything turns out in it. And there's like a kitchen cabinet, a separate kind of part with a kitchen with a working oven and everything. And this becomes important later on. But anyway, then Shu leaves another note for Arrietty to find on the grate next outside of her house. And then Pod arrives with another loaner or a borrower from the outside. He's called Spiller. So basically they have like those that stayed in the houses and those who lived out in the wilderness and survived there. So he was out on this trip and he kind of hurt his leg, and this other borrower from the outside that they didn't know about at the time helped him because he damaged his leg, and he kind of took him back to the house. And they question him if there are others like them, and he doesn't know. And then they want to make him stay for dinner or something, or for tea, but he has his own like dinner. He has this cricket leg that he's supposed to eat because he's a wild kind of character. He even has this bow that he kind of stretches out in front of Arrietty and shows that it actually takes a lot of strength to draw these arrows, I guess. But anyway, they beg him to stay, but he leaves. And then Shu lifts up the kitchen part of the dollhouse, and he goes out in the yard, and he lifts up the roof of the loaner's house. And the mom is in the kitchen, so he removes some walling up from their little construction part of the house, which is made of wood, and he puts in this new fine kitchen from the dollhouse, and he closes the lid. And Pod and Arrietty kind of bash in the door, and they find this new kitchen, and their mom is super happy about it. And but Arrietty and Pod is kind of confused about it. But later on, the borrowers are prepping to leave, so they take only what they need to survive, just to move on. So they're at this point they're going with Spiller to find a new place to live. But Arrietty goes one last time to see Shu and say goodbye, basically. So she goes out in the yard where he is basically lying down in the grass and reading a book. And as she approaches, the cat kind of wants to attack her, but Shu stops her and calms the cat down. And they talk a bit, and she basically tells him that they have to leave because that he saw him and everything. And then he spills the beans that he has a heart problem and he's sick, and he might actually die, and he's sorry for causing all of this. All he wanted to do was just to help her. And then he asks one last time if he can see her this time, and he looks upon her, and they look at each other, and he says that she's beautiful. And then the housekeeper is seeing all of this in the distance. So what the housekeeper does is she goes back into the where the borrower houses is, and she opens up the lid, and it picks up the mom of the borrowers, and she puts her in a pocket, and later in a glass jar, and she put it in the pantry. And Arrietty returns home, and she finds that her mom is gone, and there's this like basically everything in the house is kind of messed up. So she realizes something is wrong, so she climbs up on the top of the house again through the vines and everything, and she calls out to Shu that can you help me? My mom is missing. And then he agrees to help. He takes her up on his shoulders so she can sit there, and they try to escape the room basically. But the housekeeper has done two things. She has locked the door because she is crazy, I don't know why, but she locked the boy in his room, and she's calling the exterminator from the number she got from the postman. So basically what happens is Arrietty climbs out the window, and they both climb out the window and she crawls into this small kind of crawlway from between some wooden planks or something, and she opened the lock, and they go through another window into the house basically. And then Arrietty and Shu leave the house and enter through the back side of it, from the back door, and they're looking for Arrietty's mom at this point, and they go into the kitchen, and the housekeeper enters, and she acts surprised, and she's like she tries to like play off that she doesn't know that the door was locked and everything. And Shu tries to distract her by saying he wants milk and cookies, basically. And the housekeeper kind of tries to bring him some cookies and milk, and the housekeeper looks out the room. And it's one of those things where if you look at someone, where did you hide the money or whatever, and if you look the person in the eye, they kind of look at where they hit it. It's like this reflex thing. But anyway, he looks her in the eye and she looks at the pantry. So while having his hand on his back, he directs Arrietty to the pantry, and where she actually finds her mom and frees her using the needle that she found early, one of her first find in the beginning of the movie. I maybe forgot about telling that, but I forgot it. And then the exterminators arrive and trying to look for. They think they're looking for rats, basically, but she actually called them in to like catch these things using traps, so she can prove that these small people exists. And while this is happening, the caretaker of the Shu actually arrives and wonder what's going on. And what are you doing, Hauru, which is the name of the old lady housekeeper? What are you doing? And she says that I found these small people, and she's acting really crazy. And Shu goes back outside in the garden. He takes the dollhouse back and puts it back into the kitchen part of the dollhouse from the borrower's house, and put it back into the dollhouse part. And he goes up to his room again, basically. And so while this is happening, the housekeeper realizes that the mom is gone from the closet or the pantry, and she kind of freaks out because she can't really prove anything of this is like that these kind of things exist. She has to send the exterminators home, and she has to confront the boy what happens, and basically all of her plans kind of get followed. And it's kind of this funny scene where she kind of breaks down. Basically, she doesn't really know what to do. And then the borrower family leaves. Basically, they follow Spiller to this new place, basically. And Arrietty kind of is sorry again and says that it's my fault that we have to leave and everything. And Pod says, well, it's in the past now, so we'll find a better place. And they're actually happy and smiling. And Arrietty goes for a little walk just before they're about to leave. And the cat is out there, and apparently now they're friends now, or the cat is accepted her. And the cat kind of goes away back to the house, and Shu is out walking, and the cat gestures him to follow him, and the cat follows him. And he realizes that the cat is leading him to Arrietty. So he runs, even though he has a big problem with his heart, and he kind of like, it's hurting and everything, but he runs for the sake of seeing her one last time. And he arrives at the edge of the forest, and he can kind of see the city in the distance. And he calls out her name, and she answers, and she climbs up on this fence, and then they talk a bit. And in the background, Spiller is kind of a bit jealous of her, so he's like, he's kind of an outsider, so he doesn't know that how big people work and everything. So he takes up his bow and he draws an arrow, and he kind of stretches the strings, but he doesn't fire. And he realized that he's not there to hurt her. So Shu gives her a sugar cube, basically, and he says so to take care and everything. And he says that in a few days I'll have an operation and my heart might make it. And she's like nice and says, yeah, but I pray for you that your heart surgery will be fine. And he in turn says that he hoped they found a nice home. So he gives him this little sugar cube. She gives him her hair clip, so he will remember her, basically. And then the sun breaks up and she leaves, and they say goodbye. And Shu goes back home, and the loner family sails away in a small little teapot to unknown location. So, can I recommend this movie? Yes, yeah, it's a fine movie. It's a little short movie that can't hurt anyone. It's like this it's like this nice story. I think it was like an English book in the beginning about small people in houses, and they're called like borrowers or loaners. So yeah, I can actually recommend this. It's actually a little nice Studio Ghibli film that, yeah, it's a nice movie. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and take care.